Hey everyone, Maryalice Goldsmith here, Director of Student Success. On today's Coach's Corner, we have our wonderful, fabulous. I don't know why every time I introduce you, I say those words because it's just so
But
darn
don't
true.
stop, like, it's
It just comes
amazing, like,
naturally.
you're like a hype man, you go with me everywhere, like, you walk into a grocery store, like, "Yo, Target, Target, I don't know if y'all know, but master coach Jeremy Rochford is about to get some vegetables." So,
Well, there you go. He introduced himself. I need to say no more. But I am really, I love doing these with you because Lord knows you bring a ton of humor, but you also bring a lot of clarity. And I think this is one of the questions that we do get a lot in terms of gauging when should you make that decision in your speaking business to take the leap of faith and go full time. I think the good news is it's actually not so much a leap of faith. There are some statistics that you can kind of measure things on. We're going to deep dive into a term that you use called beautiful tension. Can't wait to get into that. But I know you've had this question before, and I know that this is something that you can address. So um, I think the best place to start is really having a full assessment of the business in order to understand, is it something that's viable to go full time, full time. So let's start there. What are some things that they should be
I think
looking
it's
at?
less about and actually, I'm glad that we're starting here because even that statement to me helps pinpoint the reality that there's a lot of confusion around this. So for me, I
Hmm.
set up a 7-step formula that and forgive the joke, it's kinda like you hear all the time with, "Your science has no place with my feelings." And the goal of this actually that we're gonna discuss today is to look at the science because there is a step-by-step metric to keep tabs on your career so that you know without a doubt, is this or is this not the right time to go full time? And I want to say that again, what we're going to do here is we're going to separate the science from the emotion because where most
Hmm.
speakers fail is they make this as an emotional decision. Like, I'm going to burn the bridges, we're burning
Yeah.
the ships, we're going full time. And then 3 months later, that
Hmm.
those bills are overdue and they got a spouse looking at them like, great job, Carl. And it's like, like if they had just followed this formula, then they wouldn't have had that issue. I'm sorry to all Carls. Y'all are wonderful.
It's true though. It's true. It's there is a realistic assessment you need to make because being a entrepreneur takes a lot of creativity. And if you are financially strapped because you took the leap of faith too soon, it's going to be really hard for you to have that creative genius and to make really good decisions to nurture the business and help it grow. So knowing when to do it, and balancing like, okay, I need money. I definitely need money, and you need money to grow the business. You need money to make money, and so really being smart and not making it emotional. Would you say that it's emotional because it's almost like, "Oh, I made it. I quit my job and now I'm a full-time entrepreneur. I can't eat. I don't have a house to live in. My wife left me, but I made it."
Well, it's that old time cliche that entrepreneurs are the only people who will work 80 hours a week to not work 40. But I feel I feel like John and I forget which book it was, but John Acuff said it brilliantly when he was talking about when's the right time to quit your job. And he's like, you complain about having one boss. But imagine having 50 tiny bosses when your electric bill and your cable bill and your phone bill come due. And I feel like what we're trying to do, and I want to be clear about this, we're not trying to talk anyone out of going full time. What we're trying to do is
Sure.
to say, when is the proper time to launch? And what mile markers can you check off to go, you know what? This is becoming less of a dream and more of a reality. Because I think
Mhm.
to get to the dream, that emotion is beautiful. That emotion is 100%
Mhm.
necessary. But when you're in that transition phase, that's where you really need to temper the emotion versus the reality. And what's great about this from my side of things is if you apply these 7 steps, you'll get to affirm the positive emotion instead of being let down by it.
Yeah. Yeah, really good stuff. So step 1, why don't we'll just walk through the steps
Yeah.
riffed on the whole all of
We
it, all
we
the
will give
7 steps.
all the secrets
So
away today, and it's super clear, like, some
alright.
of this may seem rudimentary. Like, some of it may seem
Mhm.
very basic, but you'd be amazed at how many times people look past it, and I myself.
Yeah.
So, part number 1 of 7 is, do I actually have something I can charge for? And
Mhm.
I love this because I failed so hard with this. Like, oh, yeah, like,
Oh,
that's
confessions too. We're gonna get
yeah,
confessions
well,
and
like, that's
steps.
the
I
great
love it.
thing, and I'm sure you've received this feedback from me, like, I'm never gonna ask someone to do something I haven't done before, whether I succeeded or I failed from it. And when I
Mhm.
lost 200 pounds, everyone was like, "This is amazing. Tell us about it." And then I tell people about it, and they're like, "Yeah, I don't care." And I'm like, "What do you mean? I did exactly what you told me to do." But when I look at it from a business side of things, I was selling my story, but my story wasn't their
Mhm.
aspirational identity. Like, I'm the only Jeremy Rochford. I'm taken. Other people wanted to be their best version of
Mhm.
themselves, and instead of using my story to show them how they could get there, I was just simply telling my story, which after the
Mm.
novelty wore off, it was like, "Well, that's good for you, but how does this help me?" And in about my
Yeah.
2nd or 3rd year speaking, when the opportunities and the luster kind of wore off, it was like, I'm not actually helping people. Like, I'm telling a funny story, but there's no A to B
Mhm.
correlation. And so when you look at the 7 steps to when is the best time to go full time as a speaker, the first thing you have to ask yourself is, do I actually have something I could charge for? Am I clear
Mhm.
on what problem I'm solving? Am I clear on who I'm solving it for? And is this idea a coaching idea or a speaking idea? And I really want to sit
Mm.
with that for a moment because
Mhm.
we get to work with a lot of amazing authors and coaches who want to build out their reach and their platform. And they're like, speaking is the next logical step. And they're right. But the challenge is they frame it sometimes with what did really well in their coaching. And they don't ever stop to think, is this one to one model going to work one to many? And so we'll have some individuals who are like, you know what? I want to teach women over 60 how to have their best life. And you're like, that's amazing. But where do those people congregate? And will people pay
Mhm.
you to show up? And
Right, right.
it jars people sometimes because they'll make, 2, 3, $5,000 for a coaching program with these individuals because it works one to one. But then they'll get
Mhm.
into it and they're like, these people tend to hang out at the YMCA or at the library, and no one's paying you to show up there. So that's where you gotta take a step back and you go, "Well, how do we make this something that people will pay for? How do we make this something
Mhm.
that a majority of a niche will pay for?" So that's step number 1, is do I actually have something I can charge for, and am I clear enough with it that anyone can understand? I always have this rule. If my mom doesn't know what I'm doing, then I need to rephrase what I'm doing.
Yeah. I mean, and this is the first part of our programs, is really getting clear. And even if you've been doing something for a long time, there may even be more layers to that you can even get more clear, more
Yep.
specific so that you can start getting paid in cash and not, Starbucks gift cards. So there is a differentiation there. And so we're experts at that, really helping you get
Well
clear. Love that. All right, let's go to number 2.
well, I it well,
Oh,
no.
you had more to
Well,
say? Sorry, I was
I
interrupting you.
was trying to compliment you, but I guess we can blow by that.
Uh,
Uh,
no, I
well,
give
no,
you give you give
it
you
I was gonna make the joke, like, you can tell how good you are at a podcast and communicating by the way you lead conversation, because literally, that was gonna be step number 2, is, will someone pay me for this idea? But I
Mhm,
want people to really sit and think about that. There are 2 things that most people will say are the most valuable things in life. 1, time, 2, money. You may have opinions on this, but when you boil it down, what are the 2 most valuable resources to people? Time and money. Are people
sure.
willing to give you their time or their money for your idea? which means
Mhm.
sometimes when you're literally getting started, speaking for free is not a bad idea because it gives you a litmus test of, will someone give me their time? Because if you can't get booked for free, then go back to number 1. You've not clearly identified the problem that you're solving because people won't even give you
Mhm.
time. But then when you get to the second point of, okay, they'll pay me time, but will they pay me money? That could be any money,
Mhm.
right? Because now we've got 2. If people are willing to give you the 2 most valuable resources they have for your idea, some time and some money, and it can be anything from a gift card up to a really nice voucher. It could be anything, right? Like, that's step 2, and we can't minimize this, because if we get to
Right.
step 2 successfully and we go past step 2, we now have proof of concept, because someone we
Mhm.
don't know is validating our thought through their time and their money, no matter how little it is.
That's right.
Which then
That's right, and I think that kinda
no, you
Oh,
go.
go ahead.
All
Finish.
good.
No, I was gonna say, I think that validates, like, what we always say, like, we can't compare our chapter 1 to somebody's chapter 25, right? And so this is important in this process. That's why it's a 7-step process, because you're not gonna, go through the speaker lab, create a speaking business, and then quit your job, right? You have to get out there, you have to market yourself, you have to test the market, you have to test your material, tweak your material. That's part of the skill of being a speaker. And so I really love step 2 because, like you said, that gives that confidence that the speaker needs to be able to say, "Actually, I'm $5,000 for that keynote." Where before, if they didn't do step 2, they may not ask that question, right? And so that segues
I'm
into 3.
brilliant. Which is, yes, so well said, to bring us to number 3, which is, will someone pay me what I want them to pay me? So step 1 is, do I actually have something I could charge for? Step 2 is, will someone pay me anything, whether it's their time or their gift card? Step 3 now allows you to level up. Step 3 means we've got proof of concept. I'm consistently being asked to speak for free or maybe an Amazon gift card. But am I able to go, "You know what? I thank you so much for the offer. My fee is $2,000." And they go, "Yes." And you're like, "You said yes, right? Okay, alright, yeah." Right? Like, there are very few feelings like that first time you ask for a number you feel you deserve, and they're like, "Yeah." You're like, you feel like you're tripping. You're like, "Did wait, you heard it was 2,000, not 200, right?" You're like, "Yeah, yeah, we're good." You're like, "Yeah, we are."
Start listing all the things you wanna get
Right? You're like,
yourself.
"Oh, I am going to snack so hard this weekend. All the gummy bears." But that's the 3rd step of this is, will they pay me what I want? Because, yes, gift cards are amazing, $200 for gas is amazing, but at some point, you have to value yourself as a professional. You have to value yourself as the intellectual property that you are, because you are the expert and you bring so much value. And what's
Mhm.
what's fascinating about this reality is there's no one step that everyone seems to get tripped up on. Everyone seems to get tripped up on something differently, because people like me, don't be like me originally. I totally have something to sell. What are you selling? Me. Great. No one wants you. Oh, okay. So, but people do. Like, people are like, or they want to speak to everyone, and you're like, but
Mhm.
okay, then go hang out at a coffee shop. But then other people will struggle to just get gigs. No, any gig. And then other
Mhm.
people will struggle in the imposter syndrome of trying to charge what they're actually worth. And instead of asking the hard question of themselves of, why am I not enforcing my boundaries? They'll blame the promoter, or they'll blame other some kind of circumstance. But at some point, you have to ask what you're worth. And if you start to
Mhm.
get it, A, high five, B, yes, all the gummies you can handle. But then
Mhm.
C, that brings us to number 4, which is, will they pay me what I want consistently and predictably? This is something that a lot of people do bypass far too often, is they get that first $5,000 gig and they're like, Benjamins forever. And it's like, nope, Benjamins for 2 weeks. because the blessing and the curse of entrepreneurism is that we celebrate the wins, but we're also the ones responsible for the wins. So if we spend all of our time
Mhm.
celebrating, then we're not planting the seeds to continue to grow the fruit we deserve. But going back to what started this whole conversation, which is the predictability of the process, if you clearly have an idea that resonates with people and you're getting to a point where you're able to turn down free or very minimal compensation opportunities and people are giving you what you ask for, then you can start to go, okay, people are, I've booked 12 gigs at $5,000 now, or most people have a range. So let's just say three to $5,000, right? So I'm getting what I ask for consistently, and I'm having no problem or guilt turning down the free or lesser opportunities because I've elevated to that stage. Once you get to that stage, which is number 4 on this, then you really start to get to the next phase, which is my favorite phase of all time.
Mhm.
Because for so many of us who start a side hustle, we tend to give up before we ever really see the fruit. For a lot of us,
Mhm.
tragically, we have really fun hobbies that if we just stuck around a little bit more, and if we just focused a little more intentionally, and if we just hustled a little smarter and not harder, then we'd get to number 5, which is what I call the beautiful tension. And the beautiful tension is when you have a full-time job, so 40 hours a
Mhm.
week. But in the 10 hours or so that you're giving to this side hustle, you're making about 25% of what you're making at your full-time job. I'm not great at math, so we'll just use round numbers. So if you're making
Okay.
100,000 a year at your full-time gig,
Mhm.
and in the 10-ish, maybe 15-ish hours that you're working on your speaking business, you're making 25,000. Then mathematically, you can step back and go, well, huh, if I'm making a quarter of my salary with a quarter of my time,
Mhm.
laws of mathematics would suggest if I 4x my effort, I will 4x my income, which means I can then actually make this as a full-time speaker. And the reason why it's a beautiful
Mhm.
tension is when you get there, the business demands want more than that 10 or 15 hours. And it's so close, you can taste it. You can see it.
Yeah.
But that then brings us to number 6, which is have we experienced that beautiful tension for 6 to 12 months? Because far too
Mhm.
often, we jump too early. Like I said earlier with number 3, we got $1,000. Yes, they'll all pay me 1,000.
Right.
Well, maybe, maybe not. You may have 2 or 3 months of a beautiful tension, but let's say that you work primarily in schools. You're gonna have an ebb and you're gonna have a flow. So if you make your
Mhm.
18-month projection off of 6 months of data, you leave yourself vulnerable for another 12 months.
Mm.
So that's why for
Mhm.
me, number 6 on this is, are we experiencing the beautiful tension for 6 to 12 months? Because if you can look back
Mhm.
and you can go, for the past 6 months, I've been able to really make, with a quarter of the time, a quarter of my income. And I've got 6 to 12 months of data. So that's
Mhm.
when you then get to number 7 is, have I considered all the outcomes of going full time? And a lot of speakers, and it's not just speakers, it's any traveling entity, comedians, playwrights, performers, musicians. A lot of individuals romanticize road living, but they don't understand all that comes with it. Now, I'm not saying nay, I'm saying please consider, because some of the things that I might as a 40 something present as a I don't want to do that anymore. The 20 or 30 might go, "Yes, I've been dying for this my entire life." So, again, non-emotional. We're just separating the science from the emotions so we can make the most informed decision. But when you're
Mhm.
having that beautiful tension and you're like, "Okay, I'm ready to do this," have you considered all the outcomes? Meaning, travel. Do you like the idea of living out of a suitcase for 50, 60, 70 events a year? Are you ready for that? Are you someone who
Mhm.
loves routine and maybe fitness is your coping mechanism, and now a lot of that could be disrupted? Are you creative enough to continue that? Are you someone who maybe you have a CPAP because of your health, and now you have to travel with that, and you never thought of that? Like, there's so many things that we don't
Mhm.
consider what life on the road could be. How will this affect my family? Do I have a supportive family? I can speak for a lot of people. When I leave, my wife is like, "Thank goodness, finally, quiet in the household. Woo-hoo-hoo." But there's
She does all your
yeah,
bookings, right?
she's like, "Yeah, you know what? We got enough anchor dates. He can stay out for another few weeks." Um, but there are also some relationships where and I'm finding this now just in my age, like, as the sandwich generation becomes more prevalent, are
Mhm.
you leaving your mother or your father who might need your care? And again, this isn't saying don't do it. Because
Right.
you might make $300,000, which is 3x more than you're making at your full-time job, and if you take 50,000 of that to hire someone to help with that parent, you're now still 150,000 ahead. But we need to consider it and be calculated. So when you get to the last level of this of have I considered all the outcomes? Have you considered what it actually would be like to live on the road for a sustained amount of time? Have you considered all the things that would affect, whether it's your physical health, your mental health, your emotional health? Do you have literal capabilities that might be threatened, whether it's medication? Maybe you're a Walgreens person, this area only has Rite Aids and you need your meds, or you do have to carry CPAP. Is your family okay with that? Do you have kids events that you might miss? Or do you have no kids and
Mhm.
this is the perfect time to do it? Have you thought about what your future looks like? And what I mean by that is this: so many people get so focused on the short term goal that they don't think about the long term goal. And
Yes,
yeah,
that's
and
huge.
the final thing is like, is this sustainable? Like what made me
Mhm.
get out of the music industry was while we were a van and trailer band, we made it, which was great. I was still a 6-foot dude sleeping on a 4.5-foot bench. And we could either spend an extra 50 to 200,000 a year to get a bus, or we could get paid. And we liked money,
Mhm.
but the cost of
Yeah.
not having that comfort meant, like, I still have bad posture. And at some point, I'm like, "This is not sustainable for me." For other people, it's
Mhm.
amazing, but for me at that point in my life, it wasn't. And even now, as I am more choosy about my events, like with both my kids being on the spectrum and needing different therapies and needing to be more home more often, if I were to get an uptick in bookings, like, that wouldn't be sustainable for my family life. My kids would suffer,
Mm.
my wife would suffer. Back to the joke we made earlier, which will be a reality in a few years, like, once my kids are out of the house, then my wife's gonna be like, "Yes, please just go on the road again." But for right now, in this season of my life, being more home than away benefits all the best outcomes. And I bring all
Mhm.
this up because we thrive off of emotion, and we should. There's so many good things that have come from emotion. But I think we can all agree that there's some negative things that can come from emotion. And so what I'm asking you to consider is to go through this 7-part checklist, write it down, put it on your wall, and ask yourself, where am I currently at right now in this? Self-assessment,
Mhm.
where am I at? And then ask yourself, where do I need to be? And then base your expectations and desires off of that. And what is great about that is you may actually up level. There are some people who should be charging
Yeah.
5,000 and they just got comfortable charging 2,500. So this thought process may
Mhm.
double your money right away. There are other
That's right.
people who realize
That's
that if they just wait 6 months longer, they'll still be married. And I may have just saved your marriage. You're welcome, by the way.
You're
I do.
amazing. You're amazing.
Hashtag so humble. Um, but what I've seen with this is not only did it help me go full time in a way that did it without regret, it's helped so many of the students that we work with go full time without regret.
Mhm,
Because not only did it edify the short term, it edified the long term. And so there was holistic happiness, which you can have
mhm.
in a speaking career or any type of intellectual property career, as long as you're doing it the right way. And that's one of the things I love about being a coach here for the Speaker Lab is we help speakers do it the right way. We're not just like this one and done, sell you a dream and then wish you the best. We teach you how to build a business from people who have been there, who have learned the hard way, learned from my mistakes. But because we learned the hard way, we can offer these unique insights that a lot of people can't because
Mhm.
they're selling the dream, but they never lived it. That's what I love about us is we're gonna tell you the honesty. We're gonna encourage the heck out of you, but we're also gonna tell you to do it
That's
the
right.
right way.
Yeah, no, this is great. I think there's a lot of golden nuggets here, especially the beautiful tension piece. I also think too, like give yourself permission to be in the season, like you mentioned, season of life. Well, there's seasons in your business too, and I think to be able to have an assessment like this and to really respect where what season your business is in. Is it a time to grow? Is it a time to just be grateful? Is it a time to pull back a little bit, like really really thinking in that way is important. One thing I also want to add, and we talked about this in a podcast I did with
Mm.
coach Angie, really knowing your worth and getting paid your worth. I truly believe when your income becomes predictable, that's when it's time to ask for more. And so when you're like you just said, some people might be getting a raise after this podcast. If you're offering $2,500 keynotes and you're getting yes, 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 it's time to bump it up, right? And so then that'll get you closer to that 6 to 12 month beautiful tension part. But this is great, and I agree. Take notes, put this on your wall, and do this assessment once a quarter, and just see how closer are you getting to that opportunity of being in that realm of beautiful tension, so that you could start having those conversations about when's the exit period, or is the exit period from full time to part time, and then increase, 50%, 50%. And then, depends on personality. It depends on what goals are. And so that's okay too. So I think a big piece to all of this is giving yourself permission, but actually doing the work to do the full assessment. It's really, really important for, the growth of you, the growth of your business, and that sustainability piece. But it doesn't have to be black and white, right? It can be, what, I'm gonna first go part-time, play with that for 6 to 12 months, then reassess and then go from there. So get creative, be realistic. But this is awesome. Thank you so much for all your
Yeah,
insight.
thank you for having me, and I love what you said, which is just give yourself permission. I think living in the reality, it's kinda like if you're in a relationship with a significant other, no 2 partnerships are gonna look the same. Give
Mhm.
yourself the freedom to make you do you, which I know is cliche, but seriously, like, look at what you want out of speaking and make it happen. Don't allow other
Mhm.
people who don't know what you want to speak hurtful truth. Speak helpful truth and give yourself the permission to
Mhm.
charge more and hold the boundaries and protect what's valuable to you. And if it is a scale of regular time to part time to no time, that's great. Whatever gets you to your goals, as long as you're doing it the smart way, using this as a template, you're going to look back with no regrets.
Yeah, I think that's awesome, and have a plan. Have a
Always.
plan. That's what we do here at the Speaker Lab. Module 5, we build out that 3-year business plan for you. So definitely re-listen to this. Write down the seven steps to this when to go full time formula by Jeremy. And if you're not a student of the Speaker Lab, come check us out. Go to thespeakerlab.com, book a strategy call. We would love to see you on the other side. But thanks so much for spending this time with us, Jeremy. Thank you so much. Value you and appreciate you immensely. You're an incredible coach and human being. And so very grateful to have you here at the Speaker Lab. You want to say
No, just
anything? Say a
thank you.
little goodbye.
Thank you for having me. Like, I thank you for the ability to share this. I've seen the way it helps people, and to get it out to more people is amazing. So thank you for the time.
You're awesome. All right, everybody, have an awesome day. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.